Water is becoming more scarce. Non-native fish, they're out-competing all of these cutthroat trout. And anglers are really concerned that cutthroat may be in trouble. If you're to lose that native trout that's culturally central to Idaho's identity, that's a real loss. Cutthroat are literally as old as the rocks that make up the mountains of Idaho. This is a creature that has survived ice ages. They've survived floods and earthquakes and droughts, and they're only found in the Rocky Mountains and the Pacific Northwest. In that respect, they're really part of our Western heritage as Idahoans. They look pretty similar to a rainbow trout, but they have a couple of real distinguishing characteristics, like the red marks under the throat that kind of give them that name, cutthroat trout. Their spots are all concentrated mostly towards the back and the tail of the fish, with these really cool contrasting black spots and these like silvery yellow sides with orange fins. This is a native fish that's really symbolic of like the entire natural history of the state. That's something worth protecting and worth conserving. Today, we're out here working with local partners to survey the cutthroat trout population in the Teton River. We do these surveys about every 2 years as a way for us to monitor the health of the fishery. When we think about the history of the management and conservation of cutthroat trout, we really need to start probably back in like the 1850s. Around that time, we start to have the first recordings of anglers observing cutthroat trout. Catch rates are tremendous. They're widely distributed all throughout the state. As the West is settled, we see changes to the landscape in the form of mining, logging, commercial fishing. The abundance of those cutthroat trout starts to really decline. The Idaho Department of Fish and Game is established sometime around 1899. At that time, we're trying to put in some basic fishing regulations, which up until then, catch and release is not a thing. Many people are harvesting the fish that they're taking home, and that means a lot of cutthroat are being harvested before they ever get a chance to spawn. Stocking was really seen as a way to keep up with all of that demand. Species like rainbow trout and brook trout take off tremendously all throughout Idaho. Pollution from mines and associated construction from logging and railroads is very prevalent. A lot of these different factors come together, and the result is that cutthroat trout start disappearing really across the state. Roughly half of the places cutthroat trout used to be, they aren't there anymore. It got bad enough that around the mid-1990s, we actually see petitions for Endangered Species Act listing on most of our cutthroat trout subspecies. So you've got this creature that has been super resilient over these literally millions of years. And now, in the blink of an eye, their populations are at risk. What does that say about our environment? What does that say about us?
It's in Fish and Game's mission statement to protect, preserve, perpetuate, and manage these populations. And letting populations blink out isn't on the table for us.
Idaho's fish are a public resource. They belong to everyone. As a Department of Fish and Game biologist, we do the science needed to manage those public resources.
133.
We need to achieve a balance of the benefit of our land uses like agriculture and forestry and things like that, but still be able to conserve those native trout populations. We're looking back on some of our previous stocking histories and thinking, maybe it wasn't a great idea to plant brook trout all over the place. They've become self-sustaining. They're out-competing all of these cutthroat trout. The fisheries management policies at those times were just quite different.
People are having a greater appreciation for native species, and that's part of the reason why we've made a lot of the management decisions we have for the state of Idaho, is because the people prioritize native fish management.
Today, Idaho is investing heavily into fish habitat restoration. We're stocking sterile trout, and industries have contributed by reducing their impacts.
People coming together over these issues and deciding that cutthroat are important to them is how we move the needle on these issues. Wherever we can weigh the pros and cons and benefit cutthroat, as well as discover solutions to work with agriculture entities, with irrigation companies, with power generation companies, the more strides that we can make to find common cause there, the better off we will be and the better off cutthroat will be.
We've come a long ways, and we've been successful in bringing back cutthroat trout in many places. But there's still more work to be done. Together, Idahoans can conserve the future of native species.